The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched our blended family gather around the dining room table. My husband Richard's 50th birthday party was in full swing. The air filled with laughter and the soft clink of silverware. Jason, our 22-year-old adopted son, sat directly across from me, his broad shoulders stretching the fabric of his dress shirt just enough to catch my gaze for a moment too long. I told myself it was pride any mother might feel watching. The once troubled teen we took in at 16, now transformed into a confident young man, but when his hazel eyes locked with mine over the candlelit centerpiece, something stirred low in my stomach. Unfamiliar and unsettling speech. Richard's sister called out, tapping her knife against her glass. My husband stood, the chandelier light catching his receding hairline, and launched into the usual stories about our 20-year marriage, the ones I'd memorized after hearing them at every family event. As his voice filled the room, my attention drifted back to Jason, who now watched me with a gaze that made my pulse stutter. The way his fingers traced the rim of his wine glass, slow, deliberate circles, sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. The cake passed in a blur. Richard leaned in for a perfunctory kiss on the cheek as Jason's hand brushed the small of my back, reaching for the dessert plates. The touch lasted less than a second, but its heat burned through my silk dress like a brand. By midnight, the guests had gone and Richard had gone up to bed, leaving me alone in the kitchen with a pile of dishes and racing thoughts. The clatter of plates masked Jason's approach, until he stood beside me at the sink, his cologne, a deep, spicy scent Richard would never wear, wrapped around me. "Let me help," he said softly. Taking the champagne flute from my hand, our fingers met and neither of us pulled away. The glass slipped, shattering in the porcelain sink. We froze, listening for any sound from upstairs. The house remained silent, but something between us had broken just as irreparably. Jason's breath hitched as he stepped closer, his body shielding mine from view in case someone came down the stairs. His hand hovered at my waist, trembling with restraint, one heartbeat. And then his lips were on mine, hungry and urgent. I should have stopped him. I should have remembered I was his stepmother, his guardian, the woman who'd signed permission slips and nursed him through mono at 17. But as his tongue traced the seam of my lips, all I could think about was how long it had been since Richard had kissed me like this, as if I were oxygen, and he were drowning. The excuses came easily, the wine, the loneliness, the way Richard hadn't even looked at me that evening. But beneath all those justifications beat a darker truth. I kissed my stepson back with the same intensity, fingers tangled in his hair as he pressed me against the counter upstairs. Richard snored on, unaware, when we finally broke apart. Jason's pupils were blown wide with need. "We can't," he said, though his hand lingered at my hip. "No," I agreed breathlessly, "we can't." But when he kissed me again, I didn't stop him. The grandfather clock struck 2 as I crept up the stairs, my silk robe clinging to skin still flushed from his touch. Richard's snores thundered from behind the bedroom door, the same rhythm that once lulled me to sleep now sounding like an accusation. I slipped into the ensuite bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection. My lips were swollen, my hair a mess. My eyes blazed with a guilty light I hadn't seen since college. The woman staring back wasn't someone I knew. 3 showers couldn't erase the memory of Jason's hands on me, the hunger in his touch making my knees weak. Nor could they wash away the sound of him whispering, "You're so much more beautiful than him," against my throat. Before we'd finally pulled away, I told myself it was one reckless mistake, a moment born of champagne and aching loneliness. But when my phone buzzed at dawn with a message from an unsaved number, "Can't stop thinking about you," my heart leapt before guilt could catch up. We became skilled in stolen moments, a brush of hands when passing the salt, lingering looks across the table while Richard talked about stocks, the way Jason accidentally left his towel in my laundry basket, knowing I'd find it, fold it, press it to my face, just to inhale him. Each exchange crackled with forbidden energy. The danger only fueled our obsession. Richard noticed none of it. He praised Jason's new maturity, never suspecting the confidence came from secretly betting his wife. "You just seem closer lately," he said one evening, patting my knee before going back to his paper. The casual remark turned my blood to ice. The first time we truly crossed the line was in Jason's old bedroom, the one where I'd once soothed his nightmares. Now, at 22, he pinned me against walls still covered in superhero posters, his mouth hot and urgent. "He'll be home in an hour." I gasped as his teeth grazed my collarbone. "Then we'd better be quick," he murmured, already unbuttoning my blouse. Afterward, as I straightened my clothes with shaking hands, Jason caught my wrist. "This isn't just sex for me," he said, his voice raw. The look in his eyes scared me because I recognized it. It mirrored what I saw in the mirror every morning. That night, Richard reached for me in bed for the first time in months. I played the role. But all I could think of was Jason's hands on me just hours before. How alive I'd felt. After years of feeling invisible, tears pricked my eyes as Richard rolled away, content and clueless. The lies piled up like dirty laundry. I canceled lunch with friends, too afraid they'd see the guilt in my face. I wore turtlenecks to hide Jason's bite marks. I watched Richard at breakfast, wondering if divorce might be kinder than the truth. Then came the message that changed everything. "I'm late," not from Jason, but from Emily, my daughter at college. The one person who could always read me. "Coming home this weekend. We need to talk about whatever's going on with you and Jason." My phone slipped from my hands, shattering on the tile like the champagne flute had, only this time there'd be no cleaning up the mess. Emily's return sent me into a frenzy, hiding Jason's hoodies, scrubbing fingerprints from wine glasses, spraying vanilla perfume over lingering traces of him. When her key turned in the lock, I was sitting stiffly on the couch, hands too tightly clasped, a magazine open to a page I hadn't read. "Mom." Emily stood in the doorway, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. At 20, she had Richard's sharp gaze, the kind that made guilty people squirm in court. Now it pinned me to the couch. I made coffee neither of us touched. The silence between us bristled with tension. "It's Jason, isn't it?" she blurted, slamming her mug down. Coffee sloshed out. The spill as messy as the truth we'd both tried to contain. "God, Mom, I've seen how you look at him. The way you both disappear after dinner." Her voice cracked. "Tell me I'm wrong." The lie died in my throat. Her face, so much like Richard's, crumbled. That night, Jason pushed me against the cold garage wall, his hands desperate. "We could leave tonight," he whispered into my neck, his usual cool gone. "Just pack the car. Emily knows." The words burned on my tongue. His grip tightened. "So what? She's not my real sister. Richard's not my real dad." The ease with which he dismissed our family made my stomach twist. For the first time, I saw the broken boy behind the man, twice orphaned, clinging to me like I was the only thing left in the wreckage we made. Richard's headlights swept through the garage windows. We broke apart like criminals at dinner. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Emily stared at her plate, jaw tight. Richard rambled on about a case, unaware that Jason's foot was slowly tracing my ankle beneath the table. When Emily abruptly stood, her chair screeched, and we all jumped. "I can't do this," she muttered before rushing upstairs. Richard blinked after her. "What was that about?" Jason's knee nudged mine, a warning. "A promise, teenage drama." I lied smoothly, reaching for the wine. My hand didn't shake. That terrified me more than anything. Later, as Richard snored beside me, my phone lit up with Jason's message. "My room now." The floor creaked as I crept down the hallway, past Emily's closed door. Jason's bedroom door was slightly ajar, his bare chest glowing in the light from his laptop. He pulled me in, kissing me with a possessiveness that left my mind spinning. We didn't hear the door open. The gasp wasn't Emily's. Richard stood frozen in the doorway, his work suit wrinkled, briefcase hanging limp in his hand. The look on his face, betrayal, yes, but also recognition, as though he'd known all along but refused to believe it. Splintered something between us beyond repair. Jason's arm tightened around me. A challenge, a claim. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. Then Richard turned and walked away without a word. The front door slammed, tires screamed, and just like that, 20 years of marriage ended in the time it took Jason to whisper. Finally, the digital clock glowed. 3:47 a.m. as I lay stiff in bed, listening to Richard's ragged breathing. He hadn't said a word since catching us, only turned and left. And that quiet heartbreak haunted me more than any shouted fury could have. My phone buzzed again. Jason's 14th text. "He's not coming back tonight. Come to me." The message sizzled in my hand, part temptation, part indictment. Sunlight crawled through the blinds before I stirred. Richard's briefcase lay tipped over by the door. Papers spilled like the pieces of our broken life. My reflection in the hall. Mirrors startled me, dark circles, bloodshot eyes, lips still faintly swollen from Jason's kisses. I barely took a step when Emily's door swung open. She took one look at me, disheveled and guilty, and her expression hardened. I told him, she said, her voice cracking, after you went to bed. I called Dad at work, told him everything. Her next words hit like shrapnel. He's filing for divorce, and I'm never speaking to you again. The house phone rang, slicing through the tension. Jason answered, and his voice shot up in alarm. By the time I reached the kitchen, he was ghostly pale, the receiver slipping from his fingers. That was the hospital, he said. Dad, Richard, was in an accident. The fact that he still called him Dad twisted the blade deeper. They think he was drinking. His car hit a guardrail. The emergency room reeked of antiseptic and burnt coffee. Richard lay unconscious, forehead stitched, arm in a cast, monitors blinking steadily. A young resident hesitated. Your husband's back was well above the limit, an officer added, explaining that they'd found an empty bourbon bottle in the front seat. Jason collapsed into a plastic chair, burying his face in his hands. I reached out instinctively, but he flinched. This is our fault, he whispered, more to himself than to me. The weight of it all crushed down on him. What we did, who we hurt. When he looked up, his eyes were wide with horror. Oh God, he was my father, in every way that mattered. The waiting room TV flickered to a segment on a prominent judge's DUI. My stomach dropped as Richard's face appeared beside footage of our ruined house. The scrolling headline read, sources say marital problems may have contributed to incident. Jason's phone buzzed, his jaw clenched as he showed me the screen. A gossip site had already posted the story, complete with anonymous tips about a disturbing affair with his stepmother. The comment section read like an obituary for our reputations. By noon, a reporter called the hospital. By 2, paparazzi circled the parking lot. At 3, Richard stirred long enough to glance at me, then turned his head to the wall. The nurse quietly asked me to leave. The house felt empty without his presence. Jason paced the kitchen like a caged animal, yanking at his hair. We need to get ahead of this, he said suddenly, grabbing his keys. I'm going to talk to Emily, make her understand. Understand what? I snapped, unable to hold it in. That we burned everything down for what? Some deluded fantasy? The words rang in the air, harsh, true. Jason's face hardened. You didn't seem to think it was deluded when you were moaning my name last night. The venom stunned me. This wasn't the wounded boy from the hospital. This was someone else entirely. The doorbell rang, sharp and cold. Through the frosted glass, I saw 2 police officers. My blood turned to ice. Jason opened the door. I lingered in the hallway, catching snatches of the conversation. Protective order, 500 feet, Judge Whitmore's request. When the door shut, Jason's hands shook. He's banning me from the house. From you, the meaning hung there, undeniable. Richard knew how to destroy us both. With no marriage, no custody, no legal rights, Jason was nobody to us. To me. As he packed his duffel, my eyes caught on a framed photo on his dresser. The 4 of us at his graduation. Richard's arm around him, proud and smiling. Jason noticed my glance and slowly turned the photo face down. Maybe this is for the best, he said quietly. Zipping the bag, there was no kiss goodbye, no final hug. Just the thud of the door closing behind him and the crushing realization that I'd lost them all. My husband, my daughter, and the boy I foolishly believed loved me. The silence was suffocating. Outside, a news van idled at the curb. Inside, the fridge still held Richard's leftover birthday cake from the party that started everything. I collapsed to the floor, crushed under the weight of choices I could never undo. Somewhere in the distance, a phone rang. Maybe another reporter, maybe the lawyer. Maybe the hospital with worse news. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. The restraining order arrived on crisp legal paper. Richard's signature stared up at me, sharp, final, and cold as judgment. 2 simple pages ended 20 years of marriage with surgical precision. I traced the embossed letterhead with numb fingers. The words irreconcilable differences did little to reflect how completely I had destroyed our lives. My lawyer's voice droned in my ear. Something about asset division and spousal support, but all I could hear was Emily's broken voice saying, I never want to see you again. The house was too quiet without Richard's news shows or Jason's music shaking the walls. Even the fridge's hum sounded accusing. I wandered into Jason's empty bedroom. The sheet was still tangled from our last encounter, his scent lingered, but his drawers were half empty. The framed family photo on his desk was gone, just a dusty outline where it had stood. His last text blinked unread on my phone for 3 days before I deleted it. Richard's face stared from every newsstand. The scandal had gone viral, prominent judge's wife and steps in affair. Screamed the headlines. My yearbook photo was beside. Images of Richard recovering in the hospital. The grocery cashier recognized me last week. Her polite smile froze when she saw my name on the card. I left the full cart and never went back. The divorce process was swift and merciless. Richard's lawyer presented evidence I hadn't known existed. Security footage from our home system showing Jason and me in the kitchen. Credit card charges for hotel rooms I'd claimed were spa days. Even our housekeeper testified about the sheets. In Jason's room. In court, Richard looked at me the way he looked at criminals. Detached, analytical, done. Emily never returned my calls. Her dorm roommate told me she transferred schools. I'd gone there in person. The look on that girl's face, half pity, half contempt, haunted me more than anything Emily could have said. Then the email came from Jason, not a plea or apology, but a formal notice. He'd hired a lawyer. A lawsuit for emotional distress and boundary violations. The dates he listed didn't match my memory, moments he had initiated, gifts he gave me, texts he'd sent in the middle of the night. The betrayal sliced deeper than the divorce. The final humiliation was when Richard sold our story to a true crime podcast. I listened numb, as he described the night he found us. The host's gasp mirrored the horror I should have felt long ago. Then came the 911 recording. Richard's voice slurred, begging the operator to let him die rather than face what he'd seen. I had to pull over to throw up. I tried to find Jason. His apartment was vacant, his phone disconnected. His Instagram showed beaches and cocktails. In one photo, his arm was around a blonde girl who couldn't have been older than Emily. The timestamp was 2 days after Richard's crash. The house sold last week, the new owners, a young couple with a baby, asked if the stained glass window was original. I didn't tell them Richard installed it for our 10th anniversary. Packing the final box, I found Jason's high school graduation program behind my desk. His messy handwriting was in the margin. Thanks for being the best mom ever. I burned it in the sink. Now I sit in a rented apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, staring at a business card from the therapist my lawyer recommended. The first appointment is tomorrow. I tell myself I'll go, that I want to understand how I became this person, but part of me wonders if some stains never come clean. The phone rings. Probably another reporter, or Richard's lawyer. Or bad news from the hospital. I don't answer. There's no one I want to hear from. The therapist's office smelled like lavender and regret. Dr. Langford sat across from me, her notepad untouched. She never broke eye contact as I spilled everything. The first brush of Jason's hand in the kitchen, my breath catching when he smiled. The champagne-soaked recklessness of Richard's birthday. When I finished, my hands trembled, my throat raw like I'd been screaming. Dr. Langford leaned forward. Do you think you loved him? Or just how he made you feel? The question lingered like smoke. I had no answer that night. I dreamed of Richard. Not the broken man in the ICU, but the one from our wedding day. His smile wide, his hand steady as he slid the ring on my finger. I woke up with a damp pillow. The other side of the bed colder than it had ever felt. Then the email from Emily. Just 3 lines. Dad's getting remarried. One of his associates, she's pregnant. Thought you should know. The words blurred. Baby. New wife. Erasure. I drove to Richard's new house. A sleek modern place with a porch. Nothing like our old colonial. I didn't knock. I just watched from my car. Richard laughed inside with a blonde woman. His hand rested on her swollen belly. Emily was there too, setting the table. Her smile soft in a way I hadn't seen since she was little. They looked happy, like a family. Jason found me anyway. He showed up unannounced, hand, hair lighter, a gold chain at his throat. Miss me, he said, smirking like none of it had happened. I looked at him, really looked. The charm had calcified. The boyish vulnerability I'd once clung to was gone. What remained chilled me. You used me, I said. He laughed. And you didn't use me. You were lonely. I was convenient. He stepped closer. But we were good together, you know it. For a moment, I faltered, remembered how alive he made me feel when no one else saw me. A traitorous warmth unfurled inside me, but then I pictured Richard's unborn child, Emily's cold eyes. The ruins of the life I'd set fire to. I stepped away. Get out. Jason's grin vanished. You'll change your mind. But I didn't. The next morning, I bought a one-way ticket to a coastal town where no one knew me. I packed light, just clothes, a few pictures of young Emily and my wedding ring. Dr. Langford once asked if I regretted it. The truth is, some days I missed Jason so badly it hurt. Other days, I despised him, but every day, I hated myself more. The taxi honked. I took one final look around the empty apartment, then shut the door behind me. Some stories don't get happy endings, some just end.